Thank you, Member. Recognizing Member from Misqualic, Michosa.
Haidhke, Honourable Speaker. Haisquichol Nuquilia. Haidhke Gwen Zanatechel et Lekwungen e Ksapsem Tenuth. Haidhke Siem Nuquilia. I just said good day to everyone. Thank you for coming to Lekwungen and Sapson land, and thank you, honourable colleagues, in the traditional Lekwungen language. I'd like to acknowledge that as MLA for Esquimalt Machosen, I also represent all Indigenous people living in our community, and in particular, the Songhees, Esquimalt and Chiano nations. And I'm able to talk here with permission of the generous and wise teachings of Elder Dr. Elmer George. We asked him if he would teach the local language to me, and very kindly, he agreed. And he also teaches the children in Esquimalt. My whole team and I attended the first lesson, and we learnt about much more than simply language. And he has given me permission to use the words and sentences that he taught me in these chambers and out and about in our community. And I feel very honoured to learn and to speak this traditional language. I also want to thank Elder Shirley Alphonse from Cowichan, now living in South Nation. She helps me regularly with protocol and cultural learning and understanding. And it was her who introduced me to Elder Elmer to ask for his teachings. And I also thank our Lieutenant Governor of the province of BC. She led the way as a community figure in learning an Indigenous language and always using it, wherever she is and whoever she's with. I was inspired by her leadership and personal action. And I took my own action because I recognise that reconciliation must mean action. We must, of course, recognise the wrongs in our history. We must recognise the impact of colonisation, of colonialism, and the harm that it has caused and continues to cause. And we must take action in all aspects of our lives in order to achieve reconciliation. At a government level, I'm very proud of the steps that we've taken. I am so honoured to work with and paddle alongside the first ever Indigenous woman cabinet member, our Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Training. And she herself said that one of the proudest days of her life was making the announcement of free post-secondary education for youth who have been in care. Because, of course, we all know that Indigenous children are overrepresented in the care system. And so this policy provides a pathway for those youth to achieve their potential and have opportunities for their lives ahead. And we've banned birth alerts, which is a big step in moving the child welfare strategy away from apprehending children and towards keeping families together. And I know of professional Indigenous women who were in a meeting, and when they heard that news, they burst into tears. These are examples of actions that are having a profound effect and paving a way for reconciliation. And we must continue to do more. We've invested in affordable housing on and off reserve for Indigenous people of British Columbia. We've invested in language revitalisation. We heard a lot about how Indigenous languages were banned and efforts were made to eliminate them when we were at the Orange Shirt Day event in Victoria this year. Children were abused and shamed for using their own languages in day schools and residential schools. So we're working with Indigenous communities to revitalise language and recognise how important it is within culture. And so we do support, and indeed we had a provincial proclamation for Orange Shirt Day to emphasise the need to recognise the history of residential and day schools and the intergenerational trauma that has and continues to result from that oppression. In fact, just recently I bumped into a local Indigenous woman outside my constituency office just last week, and she commented and spoke to me directly about how important it was for her to see me at the Orange Shirt Day event. We also made a historic decision to implement revenue sharing from gaming with Indigenous communities. This supports communities with reliable funds that can be used to support their communities with what they need and what their priorities are. We're working with Indigenous people and local communities to put the principles of the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People into action. We've committed to co-develop legislation with the First Nations Leadership Council to bring the principles of the UN Declaration into provincial law, and legislation will be introduced this session. I've also been very closely involved with the provincial work in response to the National Inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I want to take a moment to recognise the enormous courage of the survivors and families who have brought us to this moment. In honour of the women, girls and Two-Spirit peoples who have been stolen and those who have survived, I'm committed to taking action and supporting change. And the path forward to end violence against Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit people must be informed by survivors, family members and communities, and involve healing and ceremony. And I attended the final session of a series of community engagements over the summer, led by an Indigenous woman leader based on Indigenous methodology. It was extremely valuable work, and as it was the last session, we held ceremony to close the whole series of sessions. And our plan for our province will be informed by this work and will be developed with families, Indigenous partners and communities. And it won't only take the government of British Columbia. It takes all of us as British Columbians. I ask everyone in this House, what will you do to advance reconciliation? What actions will you take to make sure that the calls to justice of the National Inquiry report are met? Thank you.
Thank you, Member.